Welcome to Conversations with Shlomi.
Hi, I'm Shlomi, your host. I've discovered that vulnerable conversations lead to some of my richest insights and personal growth experiences. So join me as I sit down with guests who inspire me, and let's explore our ups, downs, and everything in between.
Enjoy listening.
This morning, we get to sit with Suri Fisch, a licensed clinical social worker, and many other credentials, which I hope we're going to speak about sometime today, and talk a little bit about your work. I don't want to do the introduction. I think you're going to do a little bit of a better introduction of yourself. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shlomi, for inviting me and for giving a voice to this work. I appreciate this, and I hope that it'll be a gift for whoever listens to this. So I introduced myself. My name is Suri Fisch. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have a lot of training in psychodrama and in psychodramatic bodywork. I can explain that later. I also have training in TB, that's Transforming the Experience-Based Brain. And that is a model developed by Stephen Terrell. It's a model that really emphasizes on developmental trauma and how it affects the nervous system. I also have a little training. I'm not certified in IFS, but I have training in IFS and I rely on it. And I also have some training in polyvagal theory. And also my trainers, my psychodrama trainers, are trauma-informed trainers, so they pay a lot of attention to the window of tolerance and to polyvagal theory and to SC. So it's a little bit of a mix, but my biggest training is really in psychodrama. My most amount of training, and that's a lot of training because psychodrama demands a lot of rigorous training in psychodrama and psychodramatic bodywork.
So we'll begin at the beginning, but I just want to, the first question, it sounds like a lot of the work, besides clinical social work, which most people experience as like talk therapy, there's a huge somatic experiencing, not specifically that modality, but a somatic experience that happens in your office with your clients.
Somatic, when you're saying the word somatic, you are referring to the body experience, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Where were you born?
I was born
What's your background?
What?
What's your background?
Okay, so yes, I was born in Muncie, New York, born and raised in Muncie, New York, and I am married in Muncie, New York, and practicing in Muncie, New York. To be more specific, I live in Spring Valley, not in Muncie, but yes, that's Muncie. I grew up in Muncie. I went to Vision School. I graduated Vision School. I taught for 14 years. I taught 7th grade and high school, 9th and 10th grade. And then when I finished my career of teaching, I also have a background in drama and dance. I directed plays, I wrote scripts. So that also informed my psychodrama, becoming a psychodramatist. And then I went to school, Sarge-Nair, Wurzweiler. Shout out to them. It was a great experience.
Shout out to both of us. Also went there, yeah.
Yes. And yes. And I basically, psychodrama was so powerful in my own life. I think I became a therapist in order to bring psychodrama more into the community. And so here I am doing psychodrama. I know that you will ask me about my work with incest survivors, right? That's what I'm here to talk about. And I first started out just doing psychodrama groups, and then an experience with one particular client led me to realize that doing psychodrama groups with specifically incest survivors will be such a gift. And so that's where it started, and that's where we are.
Psychodrama, incest. We arrived at incest work. So most of the work that you do is really with incest survivors, or is this some of the work that you do?
I'm trying to think if it's fair to say that most of my work is with incest survivors. It's a big part of my work. It's a big part of my work. It's a big part of my clientele. It's not the only thing I do at all. I run a regular psychodrama group personal growth or people with little T traumas or whatever. I run it every week. I also am going to do an intensive for mental health professionals only because mental health professionals have a hard time finding a space to heal where especially in our community, where they are not nervous to find their clients. So I create that. I think there's also a demand for me to do a group like that. And that is probably in the near future. But
so this is basically a group for therapists, professionals who you're saying that there's always a worry that they're going to go to a psychodrama group or any healing group or processing group, and they're going to find one of their own clients there. And this is going to be basically only for professionals.
yes.
Their own space.
Yes, I think that there isn't so many spaces that provide psychodrama. I mean, there are, right? Me and my colleagues, my friends, but there isn't so many. And so when a therapist wants to do this work, and I think many therapists maybe are interested because maybe from the therapy world, they know it more than just other clients. I don't know, but there is a demand. A lot of people have asked me, and so I'm creating that space. But my work with incest survivors, I think it's unique. And I mean to say there isn't yet more. I am part of a secular alliance. It's called Incest Aware, and they have 65 practitioners all around the world. They are the only organization that calls themselves incest. The only organization in the whole world. There is something called, I think, something about sibling or something like that, but they are literally the only one. So I think that I'm known, or you're calling me here to talk about incest just because it's rare for people to put themselves out there like that and to call it on its name. And we can talk soon why I thought it was important. But I do think that if you'll ask any from therapist, they will have, or not from therapist, any therapist in the world, they will have a big portion of their clientele that are incest survivors.
Meaning this is a topic that is basically it finds its way into every therapy room,
100%.
but somehow very still not talked about enough, not acknowledged enough,
Not acknowledged enough. And I don't know if we can ever acknowledge, meet the need of acknowledgement. Not because, I think that lately there have been a lot of speaking out about sexual abuse, and there's so many good organizations and so many good therapists and good people who have spoken out, and that has created that our community has really come forth. And I think that is why I could now call it incest. I think that 15 years ago, I wouldn't be able to name it like this because it's a progression. I am standing on the work that those before me did. And so that's why now, there's a lot of people like Bright Beginnings, Rabbi Yaakov Horowitz, and there's Magenu, and there's, of course, Ray of Hope, right? Even though they came a little after already, and, Zeldy Brody and Ray of Hope, which are doing amazing work, and so many that I'm not even mentioning. And I think that is why I can call it incest. And I think that's why also, because so much work is being done, it is important to call it incest. Because what's happening is when you're always naming it as sexual abuse, even though we know, and I looked it up before, like there's various studies, and the biggest study says that it's like 90% of all sexual abuse is done by people who they know really like family or family members. So there's a big percentage. You can look up the studies and it could be different numbers, but there is a big percentage of sexual abuse that is actually incest. And what's happening is that because we're only calling it sexual abuse, then the survivor that's listening to all these talks could then go into their brain and saying, nah, mine really wasn't anything. It was just my brother. It was just my father. It was just my mother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, whoever it was, right? And they minimize that. And that is dangerous or not healing or whatever you want to call it. It's definitely not,
basically it gives them the space. It gives them, like, if we only call it sexual abuse, then an actual incest survivor will feel again othered. Oh, they're not talking about me. My thing isn't really this thing that everyone is talking about, sexual abuse, even though that most of the sexual abuse that's out there seems to be actually from family members, and it
Exactly.
isn't.
And so it hinders the healing in that way. And the other way is also that the incest survivor feels that this is, even if they do know that it's sexual abuse, right? There's one danger that they can decide that their happening is not, and then that prevents the healing, and then all the dysfunction that comes with that. And the other thing is also that even if they do know, then the message they get is, well, we can talk about sexual abuse, but we can't talk about incest because that's too bad. Kibbutz Avim comes before, or family comes before, and so you need to shut up and just suffer and not heal because there's no place for you. And
I want to stop you here. Meaning, kibbutz avim comes before. Meaning, yes, they hurt me, but I need to respect them, and I cannot speak about it.
yes,
And there's no healing in a place of that shame or that hiding or
I would say fair. How I'm experiencing it as a therapist when people bring the Kibbutz Avim piece, it shuts people up with a fear of, I'm not allowed to talk bad about them. I'm not allowed to say that this happened. I'm supposed to go along with the gaslighting idea of whatever parents do is allowed to. So many grandparents, parents, mothers, fathers, whatever, use the thing of, I'm your father, I'm your grandfather, I'm allowed to. I've heard that so many times. And so it's very easy for a survivor to go along with that narrative and keep that shame and that pain and all that comes with that in their heart. And we know that as long as it's there, it's either going to continue or come out in some kind of way, some kind of dysfunction.
Yeah. I want to talk about the way I initially became aware of you and really started following your work was on LinkedIn.
Right.
And you put out these posts, and they're not, hey, here is what I know about incest, and here is what could be, or sexual abuse. You write these beautifully first person, like from here, like as if the incest survivor has written the post,
You're right.
and they're deeply moving.
Right.
And even as a therapist, I read them, and I am moved. Sometimes I tear up because they speak to a language of despair and hope, the despair that is and the hope that can be, that really touches my soul. Where does that come from?
So first of all, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Because it really is my hope. And that is why I write it in first person, because I felt that pathologizing is not healing ever. We need to have all the pathology and the skill and the training in our heads, but that's not where the healing happens. The healing happens between human and human. And I felt that in order to really have that, it needs to come from a first person perspective. And also, there's a bigger piece of why I didn't link it. I feel that society, community is huge in the healing. You know, it's part of psychodrama training. We have a piece that's called sociometry. So Moreno said something, I'm just trying to remember the words. Something like, there is no healing other than the healing of the whole, of the whole world, or something like that. I'm not quoting it properly, but that meaning. And so I see it so much because I run groups. Just sitting, I could never provide the amount of healing that I do one-on-one as the healing when there is a group. The amount of healing that the group provides for each other, the community piece provides for each other, I could never provide that in one-on-one. So I'm very aware of that. So what I wanted to create is a community, society that understands and can be there, right? And I think most people who are attracted to my posts, who like it, who feel for it, are the people who can be part of this community, part of this healing understanding. And most of all, if survivors read my posts, and many do, I know that they do, they feel that, and they see people liking those posts, and they see people commenting, right? Commenting on it. So their community in their heads becomes bigger. Just by being on LinkedIn and them seeing how many likes it gets, they feel like they have a community now. They feel there are people out there who understand this, who see this, who believe that they deserve a space or deserve healing. And even if she never contacts me, or I never even know that she read the post and saw it, I know that that's healing. And so many people do reach out and they say, thank you for putting this out, little things here and there. But I know that how many people are reaching out, much more. It's reaching much more. That's the power of social media nowadays, Everyone experiences it so deeply. And so I want to say, it's the felt sense. I don't want to say that it's what I imagine my clients experience, because if I do imagination, I can just go on, right? It's the felt sense of what I get from them. And I always ask for feedback from my clients. Like not on my LinkedIn post, but when I am with my clients, I'm always asking if I understand them well, right? So I hope that I get a real good felt sense of it. It's influenced by the felt sense that I get from my clients and also from my own experience.
So you were a teacher for, you said 14 years?
Yes.
12 years? 14
14,
years.
I think it was 14, yes.
14. And
Yeah.
you did the drama, like plays, I'm guessing productions, we call it by us here in Crown Heights, but like the idea where the school has like puts on a huge production and somebody leads it.
Directed plays in camp before I got married, and then after I got married, I directed plays for school. So yeah, and before I directed plays, when I was younger, I was a lot into dance, so I knew a lot of the parts that need to happen in that. Yes.
So dance as a again, I'm using the word somatic, as a body expression of an experience.
Yes.
Play, drama, and then you decided teaching. I'm done with teaching, and you immediately decided to become a social worker or to go to school for social work?
Actually not. It's funny because when I became a social worker, I said no one in my life will be surprised, but I actually was.
Really?
Yes, I actually was surprised because when I was done with teaching, the thing that made me stop teaching also was, there were many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons was that I had a little 3-year-old daughter who my transportation for my school would pick me up literally like a few minutes before she went on the bus. And my neighbor was going to put her on the bus, and she refused, and she did not want to. And I was like, that is it. If teaching is not working with my motherhood, then the teaching will go. And I actually spent a year in my house, not working at all, just being a mommy and being a neighbor and being just a woman. And my sister actually was telling me, my sister was a therapist for a lot of years. I have two sisters that are therapists. And so my sister was a therapist for a lot of years, and she got on the phone with me. And well, first she always said, Suri, you need to get your BA, you need to become a therapist, you need to get your BA. And then one day, I don't know where she was coming from. I think she was coming from one of her workplaces. I don't remember. And she called me up, and she's very passionate, my sister, and very strong. And she said, Suri, you need to get your BA now. Like, this needs to happen. And she is a very big chassid of Nicholas Rebbe. And so I knew that the only way I can talk her down was going to be, all right, fine, I'll ask the Rebbe. If the Rebbe says I should do it, then I'll do it. And so that's how she was like, okay, fine. So then from when I hung up the phone with her until I actually met the Rebbe, I was really getting excited already. All right, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to become a therapist. And so I had all the reasons already why I wanted to do it, not only why my sister's telling me to do it. So the Rebbe asked me a few things. I don't remember exactly what. I think he asked me if I feel I can do the college work. I think he was concerned about that. And thank God it was not. I mean, I do have a dyslexic piece, so that part was hard. But yeah, I got a high GPA. So okay, all right. And then yeah, and then it was Yeshiva University, right? So it was a from place, and anyway, from then on, that's what happened.
Why do you think the Nichols program said you should do it?
why I think he should.
You think it was like, hey, you think this would be a good career move for you, or he saw the larger
Picture?
picture?
Well, I'm not going to pretend that I can go into his head. He was more, when I was
Was it
talking to
part of the
him,
conversation when he spoke to you about it? Was it more about you can help Klal Yisrael, or this would be really good for you?
yeah, it was more about if it will be good for me, and he was more being concerned, right? If and how I should do it. More like to be supportive to me in my endeavor that I decided. I think I'm trying to think if he did say. I don't know. It's a lot of years ago already, so I don't know if just his concern is what stayed with me, and he didn't say anything about that, or if that was really the conversation. It wasn't a long conversation. What I do want to say that having grown up in Nicholsburg definitely informs my work. I went to shul since I was in pre-1A. My other sister used to take me. She's very spiritual, and I just hearing him sing all the time and hearing his voice, it's almost like I know what love means through him. I know how to like put out love in the world through him.
Mm.
And also growing up in Nicholsburg really made me have a felt sense, an embodied sense of that Hashem loves us.
Wow. That's a very big and very beautiful statement.
Yeah,
That means that there's something felt in Beis Medrash. There's something felt in
yeah,
shul when you go to shul.
yeah,
It's not
very,
just traditions and words and davenings and what's it called. It feels like it's an experience.
yeah,
It's a connection.
very much an experience. I can listen to the singing now. Even his son is famous. His son is Yoeli Lebowitz. I don't know if you know him, but when I
Comedian, or at least
what?
he was a comedian for a
Yeah,
bit. He
yes,
still
he
is.
was a comedian for a bit. So, or not so much for a bit. I don't know. He surely has that sense, to make people laugh and all that. When I hear him sing, because he reminds me so much of his father, I can get so emotional just by hearing him sing. Yeah, this voice or the presence, there's something there that he has that reminds me of his father very much. So, yeah.
Mm. So you become a social worker. Those are the early years of Sarashner Wurzweil,
Yes,
or
I was
the
actually the second graduating class in Sarashner.
right.
It's
And that's on the women's side. I think the men's side came much later.
yes.
If I understand correctly, yeah.
Yes, the men's side came later. Yes, there was no men's side when I was a Sarashner. I was the
Right.
second graduating class, and I had a beautiful experience there.
Yeah.
It's
So you get into this work, and you had shared before that there's this one client that shifted your work to incest.
yes,
And you had shared before we clicked the record button, you had
right.
shared an email or a
Which was
message
a
that you
messaging
had.
because before I came on here, I asked them if I can share the experience, and let me read it to you. Okay, so here's their answer. They said, "Yes, please do if it will help someone. Anyone, just one person. It's worth it. Thank you for the honor."
It just moves me so much. This answer moves me so much that this person is willing to share their really painful story because they know that if it can help just one other person out there, it's all worth it.
Yeah, and I am sure that it will help, and that is already helping more than just one person.
Hmm. What was that story that kind of shifted your, like when you came out of school, it's like, I'm going to be a social worker, I'm going to see depression, anxiety, OCD, and so on. But this person really made you feel this story.
Yes.
Their story made you feel. So what is this story?
Well, it was more than just the story. It was I think, in therapy, it's always a two-way story, even if we don't like to own it or do like to own it. I think it's their story and my contribution to what I was able to do. Um, it showed me in my face what I can do. And when I stood there directing the drama, and afterwards I remember driving home, it was like, what am I doing? Not doing incest survivors. Like, what am I even doing? It was, I think also it was before Purim or something, and there is this Hasidic song. Well, it's not. It's just Hasidic singer. That's something about, they took the words of, I didn't see the Melech Zesh Loshim Yom or something like that, right? And so it was playing in my head, and I was older than 30 at that point, and it was in my head, and I was driving home, and all of a sudden I was like, what's the wording? The wording is like, I wasn't called to the Melech for 30 days. So it was like, somehow it translated in my brain of like, for 30 years I was waiting for my calling. This is Hashem calling me.
I'm hearing the song in my head, but I can't grab the words or the name of the singer right now. But it will come to me.
Yeah.
But the way you internalize this is that, wait, I just did this, and here I am being called to my calling, to my king, to my work.
Yeah, it's like I've been waiting for Hashem to call me for 30 years. This is it. This is it. And it felt so strongly that I was like, all right. It took me a few months until I created the incest thing. Yes, I guess there was another few steps before that also that was pushing me to do the incest work. But this drama was like the nail in it. Like, that's it. I was going to do it. And so that was really like the nail of like, that's it. You're going to do it. You know how sometimes you have like a faint idea. Should I do this? Should I not do it? And then all of a sudden it's like, yes. So that was the yes for me. Mm-hmm. So I guess I should tell you a little bit about that drama and what parts of that drama influenced me in such a way that I knew that I need to do this work. So what happened was that this client, I knew them only from group, not my individual client, had been in my group once before, and this was the second time that they were in group with me. And I knew that there was this story inside their heart. I knew that they were abused by a family member. I also knew that it was a complicated, every abuse situation is complicated, but the abuser was not alive, and it was a complicated death. It wasn't just a simple death. And coupled with that was that the client was before a big life event. So having this sort of processed before would have affected them in a very big way. So what came to me as a director and facilitator was a huge desire to do the work. There needed to be a sensitivity or a knowledge or a carefulness to how you're going to process this with the intention of not overwhelming the system. So, and the client was concerned about that. The client was concerned. So what I encountered was what many trauma therapists encounter every day is a strong yearning to talk about and release all those feelings versus a strong fear of being overwhelmed, right? In IFS, talk a lot about the polarized parts, and I think every trauma therapist meets those. And the way my training helped me mitigate all this and seeing that the client really stayed with me in their window of tolerance, the whole entire drama, and the drama took maybe like an hour or something, so I can explain a little bit how I do my work, and it'll probably shed light to any trauma therapist doing any kind of trauma healing. So I'm a trauma-informed psychodramatist, right? And my biggest mentor is Scott Giamucci. He's a doctor. I train with him very much. He's my primary trainer. In psychodrama, you need to have a primary trainer and a secondary trainer, and I meet with him every second week. So his addition to psychodrama was trauma-informed psychodrama.
I just want to pause this for a second. Yeah. You're officially a psychodrama, trauma-informed psychodramatist. Is that what you call it?
So the reason why I need to say that I am a trauma-informed, that I am someone who does psychodrama, trauma-informed someone who does trauma-informed psychodrama, rather than calling myself a trauma-informed psychodramatist, is because I'm not a CP yet. In order to have a CP, you need to have 680 hours and been watched by your primary twice and been watched by your secondary twice. And my first 700 hours, count the years.
That's
Okay.
a lot of time.
Yeah, my first 700 hours with psychodrama was not with a TP, was not with a certified trainer of psychodrama. So I had to let that go. And now I'm like, I'm going to be over 300 hours. And I directed already in front of my primary. I didn't direct yet in front of my secondary. And so that's why I can't call myself a psychodramatist yet. I am
But
someone.
I want to pay that's the legalities behind it. But I just want to take a moment, and also that means that the way I see it is that, so you did already 700 hours, and you're doing now 300 hours again, and it's continuous work. I like
Yes,
that. Like I'm always in school. I will never be it, and I will never have arrived as this dramatist. I know it all or anything. I will always have a supervision. I will always have people checking in my work, and that's how
100%.
I work. Even if I am very competent and run my own groups, and they're very meaningful and successful groups, I'm always working. I'm always a student.
100%, 100%. And I will
That's
always
how I
be
see it.
probably, I hope that I will be 90 years old and hopefully without a cane and still going to doing my trainings and my work.
Yeah.
That's my dream. Yes. I don't think that you can be a therapist without doing some work on yourself all the time. I don't want to say that every single era in your life is the same and you always have to do the same kind of work, but I think that you have to have experienced some deep work on yourself in order to be able to hold them
Yeah.
and whatever comes up in the room. Yes, and I do a lot of supervision. I have a ton of supervision. I train very hard. Like I do at least 4 5-day trainings in a year. At least.
5-day trainings. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, at
That's a lot.
least. Sometimes I do more. But yes,
Coming back to the group that you were
yes.
running.
So coming back to the group, and so why I wanted to explain the trauma informed care is because the idea is to bring in strengths. So let me just first explain very quickly what psychodrama is. That you in a group, you basically have, in the same way as you would do play therapy with little menchies, in a group you have people doing the parts, doing the roles, actual people acting out. So the idea of trauma informed care is that you need to first support the brain in such a way that when they actually talk about the trauma, they are within their window of tolerance. So how do we do that? We invite in strength roles. So there could be interpersonal strength roles, which is my brother, my sister, my friend, my Rebbe, my therapist, right? That's interpersonal. Intrapersonal is internal, my self-love, my self-acceptance. And then there is a word for transpersonal. Transpersonal means a spiritual strength. So many of my clients, it's Hashem. Sometimes it's a grandmother that's not alive. Sometimes that's whatever it is. So I'm going to explain to you how I did this drama solely with strength based. So sometimes people will think that you need to talk bad about the boogie monster that hurt you or the trauma that happened, and you need to do all that. And if you're just gonna focus on the strength, you're not gonna get anything. And the reality is that it's not true. It's actually quite the opposite. I like trauma-informed strength-based psychodrama not because it's only safer. It is safer, 100% safer, but not only because it's safer, but also because if the client is not in their window of tolerance, you're not processing anything. They could be crying, releasing, whatever you want to say, and they're totally dissociated. They're not here. They're going to need to redo this drama 100 times. This client, after they did this drama, that's it. They left group. They never came back because they felt that they'd done it. And yeah, they only did
And it was all
two
strength
dramas with
based.
me.
That means
Yes,
that
let me
means that
explain
it
to
was
you
all. So what does that
what
mean?
strength-based means. So I'm going to try to remember, but they brought in a mentor, a friend, and one family member, or somebody that would be a strength for them to do this work. And what you do is they first become they first act like, let's say, the mentor or the therapist or the friend, and they say to, let's say, Rifki, I'm here for you. I'm so proud of you. You've always wanted to do this work. This will be hard, but you can do it. All that energy. And then the client reverses roles. Somebody in the group plays that part, and the client listens to that. What happens to the client in their brain is they're hearing positive messages. Their system is calming down, right? And then we bring in their own part of them that wants to do this work, or the self-acceptance, the part of them that self-love, you wanting to do this work for so long. It is time for you to unburden, their own strength. And then we bring in a transpersonal thing, if it's Hashem, if it's whatever. So I don't remember exactly who we brought in. And I'm not always makbid that it's going to be these three. I always do want to have 3 strength-based roles before I start the work. And usually I ask, and what happened here was, I think one of the strengths was a family member, an adult, was either a grandparent or a parent or something like that, right? An adult family member who didn't know of the abuse. And as they were saying all the nice words back to the client, like, I love you, I've always seen the strength in you, and all that. And I asked, because I knew there needed to be some saying, I asked the client, do they know what happened? And so the client said no. And so I asked, do you want to tell them now? Do you want to tell them here in psychodrama? And they said yes. And they started saying. And as they were saying, they said, well, I feel like I'm betraying my abuser. And I told you that there was a complicated death here, right? And so I knew. Now, this is something, I don't want to put it out there and then everyone should use it irresponsibly, because sometimes the client is not ready to experience. So let me say it like this. Every client, when it is an incest survivor, has a yearning for the connection with the abuser. Every person. You cannot not want a father in your life. You cannot not want, am I saying this right? You cannot divorce yourself of wanting a mother, of wanting siblings, of wanting family. Everybody innately wants family. There is that yearning there. But not every survivor is at a point of seeing that or wanting to know that right then and there. Okay, but this particular drama, I knew that there was a lot of yearning specifically in that moment and a lot of grief around that relationship, of not having that relationship. So when they said, I feel like I'm betraying the person who's not alive anymore, I said, could we check that out? And what we did was I enrolled them in the soul of that person. And so I interviewed them and I said, okay, you've been in Shemayim for, I think it was, more than 5 years. You've been in Shemayim for so many years. And I knew the client's belief about Shemayim and healing and all that, right? You have to know all these things. You can't just, right? And they said, yeah. Do you believe that there's healing there? So they said, yeah. So I said, so why don't you talk to whoever the client was for that? Why don't you talk to them and tell them what you want to say? A ton of apology. A ton of apology came out. So much came out of that. Trying to remember more, it's not so recent. And what happened was, after they heard all that, right? So the abuser was sort of saying the apology and saying how much they hurt them and saying how it wasn't their fault. All that. Afterwards, they reversed roles and they listened to all of that, right? It was not your fault, not my death, not the abuse. I'm sorry.
For clarification, that means someone else is now taking on. The first part of it was the client themselves being the neshama of the deceased, talking and giving the apologies. And now reversing roles means that client becomes themselves again and somebody else in the group is taking on the role and repeating again, meaning someone else is taking on the role of the neshama and talking to the client directly and repeating again all those apologies.
Exactly. And what happened after they listened to that, at one point, I think they reversed roles back and they said, I need you to be mad at me. You need to be mad at me. And so then they reversed back roles, and now the client was able to be mad. There was zero resistance to any kind of feeling. Zero resistance. And the reason why there was zero resistance, only because it was so strength-based. Are you seeing how I didn't even bring in the only antagonistic role that I brought in was that I was talking to the healed part of the abuser, and that has a little bit of a still antagonistic because actually he was the abuser. But I brought in the soul. I'd never brought in the abuser, right? I brought in the soul, the place that was ready to own all the stuff that was happening, right? And this client's fear was really low. They were here and they were really present for the healing. Really, really present for the healing.
That unlocked in them the ability to have that anger that they were carrying for. After going through the whole apology process, that allowed them to say, "Hey, now I need you to be angry," and now they were able to be angry in a releasing way.
Yes, like in a releasing way, which was present in a justified anger way, not in a rageful way. In psychodramatic bodywork, we call it rage is dissociative and addictive, and it's mixed with fear, and so that's why it sounds all over the place. But real anger looks like this was not okay. That's real anger. And so that kind of anger the client was able to have, versus if I wouldn't have been so strength-based, it would have never been able to come out in such a justified, real way. And never mind, there was a ton of grief with the whole apology and all that, that came smooth, without fear, without resistance at all. I could tell you another story. I also asked this client for permission from this was already much later. This was when I did an intensive with incest survivors. And Basi, who is a peer support, who is my friend, who assists me in doing the groups.
I'll pop this in. So Basi was recently on the podcast with Ellie Nash.
Yes.
Talking about her story of incest surviving. So she's an incest survivor as well.
Yes.
And she has joined this profession not as a professional, but what she felt or feels is the right
as a peer support.
Level for as a peer support. So she works with you in the group to as a support element to the group.
Yes, and she strongly feels that her work as a peer could be stronger I think one day she'll be a therapist, but right now she's giving the gift of being a peer, and she's right with that she can give a gift bigger than therapists could give many times. So
because in some ways the therapist automatically becomes like, you're up here, I'm here, I'm broken, and you're healing me and some. But as a peer, I'm just one of you. I went through the same story, and I can be there with you in your story.
Yeah. Also, because a therapist has professional boundaries, I will never share my story with my clients, right? Even if sometimes I could say something like, I relate to that feeling, or I understand that kind of a thing, or whatever it is. But it is a space for the clients, and
she's not bound by that.
Yes. And so
she can bring that of herself into the room.
And it's a tremendous gift as to be able to be, her role in my groups is to be a support. She's not doing dramas. She's not doing work, right? However, everyone in the room and she is comfortable to know her story, right? She can really be that person, and she can really be the light and the hope in a very real way. So yes, so she's a tremendous gift for me and for the clients and for the world and for all those healing from incest. And when I'm saying for all those healing from incest, I also want to say that even if somebody didn't experience incest, however, they are in the family of incest survivors, or that it also needs healing. Like the community, we need healing around this topic. And so she is a gift for everyone. So she knew this
Let me
client of
double
mine.
check. Sorry, let me just. That means that the healing is obviously for the survivor. They need healing. They need release. They need to be able to move on from the pain that they're holding, from the internalized messages. But the family around him or her needs to also get healing, and not just the family, the community, the neighbors. All of them get healing through the process of beginning the healing with the survivor, and so on. And that's I think what you're saying. She's bringing healing to the entire community by talking about it, to be bringing it out there and putting it
Exactly. Because even if you, let's go farther away, even if you're just a neighbor of something like that, it shakes you on a certain level. And so even if you're just a community member where you know that incest exists, it shakes you, and it's normal that it should shake you. We don't want this trauma to exist in the world. We really don't. And so when you see the healing and when you provide healing for the world, I think it is healing for everyone on a certain level. So Basi knew this person that was joining the group, and I was directing the drama, and I was also doing strengths, right? I was bringing in 3 people, and I didn't know that she had had a conversation with Basi before, and she got to a place after her 3 strengths. I asked the strength when she was in the friends role or something. I asked, so do you want to say her story? Because she was talking about wanting to say her story. And she goes and she's holding the scarf. Every role has a scarf, and she's holding a scarf. And she's like, no, she needs to do it by herself. And so she took off the scarf, right? All the 3 strength roles waiting by her side. And she says, I need to say this. And so we formed a circle with a group, and she sat, and she said her story like that, whatever part of her story she needed to say, like this. And of course, everyone ran around in the group and said, survivors just know exactly how to do it because they just know, right? There's nothing like it. And so everybody said, I'm sorry that happened to you. Or everybody said that. And that was maybe the first half hour of the drama. And then the drama went much further and deeper and everything. And afterwards, by the sharing part, after the drama, everybody shares what came up for me. And Basi's like, I thought this whole drama was going to be about you struggling to say this piece that you wanted to say. Because Basi knew, because she had spoken to her before, right? And it went like this. Because she was supported with strength roles. And her window of tolerance was strengthened by all carrying all those messages. And of course, because we work slow. It's not just the strength roles. Trauma-informed care also is collaboration, choice. I always ask, right? There was no resistance. I think I would dare to say that if you're feeling resistance in the therapy room, you should check how trauma-informed you're really operating.
It's a big statement.
What?
That means that's a big statement.
It is a big statement.
Basically, what you're saying is when you, as a therapist, you're noticing that there's resistance, it means the client is not ready to do the work that they want to do or are trying to do. Check yourself. Nothing to do with the client. Check what you're doing in terms of your
Yes. Well,
trauma.
if you're calling it resistance, because when a client doesn't want to go someplace, right? Or wants to and doesn't want to, right? If you're going to listen to that part that doesn't want to go there, you're really going to understand that part is really right. That part is really right. That's not resistance. That's going according to what your psyche could do right now. Right? You work with addicts. I think there is no way where a trauma therapist could not bump into addiction, and where addiction therapist could not bump into trauma, right? It's always going to be.
Yeah.
So how many times have you, what?
They're very much intermingled. Yeah. They go together, unfortunately, like a glove in a hand.
Yes. So how many times have you experienced with a client who now in hindsight you can see that was operating? How many times have you worked with a client that still needed to be in their addiction, and they really still needed to be there? And then in that moment, we didn't know if they were ever going to be sober, right? But then when it's 2 years down the line and they're strong and they're sober, then you could say, something, you needed to still be in that.
Right.
Right?
very much we believe that the addiction is an answer to a problem. It's not the problem itself, and that answer, until you work with the problem, which is normally a huge traumatic event, big T or small T, but collected into a very strong pain story, trauma story,
Right.
then that's the answer for it. Until you have a better answer for it, that's the answer for it.
Exactly.
Or in IFS, they say if you're pulling out that part, make sure you know what you're replacing it with.
Yeah, transforming with it, right?
Right.
Transforming it into, yes. Yeah, you're bringing me to another point that I really wanted to make. But first, you had that questions about prevention or something. Do you want to read that,
Right.
please?
I
So I
wanted
can.
to. So we spoke a lot. So it's very clear that you're doing the work that you're doing is trauma informed drama. It's a tongue twister. Trauma informed dramatist or drama
Yeah,
work.
psychodrama, trauma informed psychodrama.
Psychodrama.
It is a tongue twister.
Psychodrama
Yes.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was tongue twisting
And
before on camera.
so
We both
so
got
that's
returned.
that's
Okay.
the work that you do, and that's really, it feels like that's very, very helpful work, with especially with incest survivors and all kinds of trauma.
Yes. It.
The question that we had, we had our colleague on, his name is Levi Dubinsky, and he spoke a lot about sexual abuse and incest. And the question that came, lots of questions came after the podcast. So, what do we do to prevent? Like,
What do we do
and
to prevent?
what do we
So,
do to prevent? Like, what I mean, and what can you add to that conversation? I think you had shared. I'm going to let you say this, but the question is: so I'm a parent. I have kids. I want to prevent this at all costs. What do I do?
okay, so I want to preface it with I'm not a prevention expert. There is Magenu, there is Brad Beginnings, Rabbi Yakovarowitz, there's other people to to direct this question. I can only talk from a working with survivors experience. So I can say my piece. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I'm not an expert, okay? But I can say my piece. So here's the thing. We cannot prevent our kids from getting hurt. We cannot prevent. However, we teach them how to cross the street. And we teach them to not eat bleach, whatever, right? We cannot prevent it, but we do teach it. So all that education that you know that is out there, all that is relevant, right? I would add two things. I would add the piece that when you teach them about, stranger danger or people don't touch your private parts or all that, the emphasis should not be if somebody does, then you scream or run. The emphasis should be on sometimes people do something like that. You could scream, run, tell them your mother is waiting, tell them your father's around the corner. You could do all that, but the emphasis should be on come and tell me. I will always reward you, and I will always be okay if you tell me, or I will always be proud of you for telling me. And from when they're little, you can teach that. Meaning to say, if they're coming to tell you, right, they're little, they don't really know, and they're coming to tell you something that's similar, reward them for it. They're 3 years old, they're 5 years old, they're 6 years old, and they say, "Mom, the neighbor said I should feel their pants or something." First, give them a freeze pop for telling you. The idea is come and tell me. The most important thing is come and tell me, because I don't believe that really when it's happening, a child could have the energy, could prevent this. We cannot put the responsibility on the child, and if we're putting the responsibility of the child on the child, then we are amplifying the voice that it is my fault so much higher in the survivors. It's already going to be there, okay? And I see that all the time. But if you are teaching them like that, you should run, you should this, you should that, right? Why didn't I run? Why didn't I? And to put that kind of responsibility on a child is, first of all, it doesn't work. A child can't, right? And that's why also I didn't like when they said that sexual abuse is unwanted sex, because that's not correct, and that is it's not helpful for the healing way of putting it. Putting it in that kind of words is not healing. So
What would you say? Because the fact is that even as it happens, it feels good.
yes,
Even as meaning the survivor at the time might even like it.
yes,
Might feel like it's the best thing, or it's good connection, it's love or whatever.
right.
So calling it unwanted puts an onus again on the survivor to,
On the
hey,
survivor,
why
on the
did you like
child.
it? Why did you like it?
Yes, did you like it? Right. If that's the question. So I feel more comfortable with saying non-consensual sex, because or non-consensual sexual encounter, because it's not only right. And why I feel comfortable with that is because children um, are not capable of consent, right? So even legally, until you're 18, even though I think that in more insular communities it should be up higher, because if you have a 20-year-old girl and a 27-year-old boy, I don't know, right? That are, I don't think that should be considered consensual just because she's 20.
Let's focus on this for a second. In more insular communities where there isn't the usual
There's not so much
intergender
exposure.
relationship. So 20 is still an age where I don't know much or know very little, and it's still not very consensual because I don't know much about it to even have true consent.
Exactly. 20, if somebody is older or stronger, and again, I don't like the age piece, also not, especially not for children. But if somebody's older or more manipulative and could really convince a 20-year-old girl that was still not consensual. It maybe legally it was, but not therapeutically and psychologically, that was not consensual. So if we
No.
use the word non-consensual sexual experience, then we have a much truer definition of what sexual abuse is.
Yeah. Wow.
And children could never consent.
Right.
And because many times the body reacts and the body wants, and even if there was any kind of ejaculation, right, or any kind of orgasm, that doesn't mean that there was a want. I wish that, we were talking about IFS before, so I wish that every survivor's tends to the part that says it was my fault in some kind of a way, in like, but I wanted it. If they have a part that says, but I wanted it, right? I wish that every survivor can transform that part to turn it towards the abuser and say, how dare you activate my desire system?
How dare you activate my desire system? No.
Because essentially, any kind of sexual turn on will have desire in it. And that is part of the abuse.
Well, and that messaging is, how dare you activate my desire system, which can be confused for consent, but really is so non-consensual. You activated a part of me that wanted this, but without having any choice or actual wanting.
Exactly. And not being able to have a choice in this. You're taking a 14-year-old girl, a 10-year-old girl, a 5-year-old girl, a 15-year-old boy. They do not have enough knowledge. They do not have enough experience in life to be able to consent.
And I think that's a big piece that you're adding. Forget age. It's true consent is knowledge, experience, knowing what I'm getting myself into. And it's not so much about, obviously, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old cannot have that consent. That's legal. But there's
Right.
also not having any consent when you're 20 because you don't know
Exactly.
anything. You grew up in a community where you never spoke to a guy.
Right.
Wow.
Yes. So that is important to put the definition of what sexual abuse means in perspective, right? And then going back to prevention, there's another piece here, right? We tell our kids, if some people want to touch your private parts, that's not okay and all that, right? There needs to be a conversation about masturbation. Because what happens very often Okay, what happens very often is if you're only talking about prevention, then the child will understand that they are that monster. So how I would put it is these conversations need to be separate conversations. You don't talk about masturbation and prevention in the same moment, right?
Just to be clear, we're talking about parents or mechanchim or mechanches or whatever that
Right.
are in a position to talk to their kids about masturbation, healthy sexual exploration, or sexual exploration, wherever you land in it. But that also has to be a conversation.
Yeah, there needs to be that conversation, and it needs to be a conversation. And the same kind of conversation, how you're going to teach your children to cross the street, you're going to teach your children how to brush their teeth. There's going to be a developmental conversation. It's going to take maybe a minute, not even 5 seconds, right? You're
It
seeing
doesn't
them.
have to be this long, awkward, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about the
No, of
birds.
course not. Too much talk is going to be abuse in itself. Like, go to your therapist, take care of your fears. Do not put it onto your child. It could be a 5-second conversation, something like when you're seeing that they're hitting puberty, or you're seeing, right? If it's a boy, they're getting some hairs. If it's a girl, she's developing, or whatever it is, you're seeing something, right? So part of you're teaching your mother, you're teaching them to put on deodorant, you're going to teach them this also. Sometimes when you become older, and part of becoming a man or part of becoming a woman, you're going to like to touch your private parts. You just make sure that you do it in the bathroom, or in a locked, if you're sleeping alone in your bedroom, or whatever kind of a thing. That's it. Nothing more. Just normal. And if we can normalize fantasies, sometimes it's also helpful if you can do that in some kind of way. And sometimes you have some thoughts while you do that. That's it. No more. Nothing. If you can normalize that. Now, there is this thing of people wanting to bring in the Yiddishkeit piece, right? And it's very important and very valuable to semen retention, or even girls shouldn't masturbate, or whatever you want to do. You can teach that afterwards. You can even do it in a few days later or something. It's like a 2-year-old, you're going to teach how to eat. And then when they're 5, you're going to teach them about hechshers, right? So you teach.
So separate the physical desire you're growing, you're feeling, you're experiencing, and then afterwards have a separate conversation. And here's how we look at this as a in Yiddishkeit, or how we approach it in terms of staying holy, or semen retention, or whatever.
Yes, and there's ways. If you're going to look even in the secular world about semen retention, there's going to be exercise. There's going to be a whole, eating the right foods. There's going to be a whole thing if you want to go down that road. And if you want to teach them all the zoyers, and you want to teach them all about it, teach it like a Yiddishkeit thing, but just normalize the biological thing. I mean, if you can look at the statistics, it's every single boy. If you're going to look in the social work books, it's going to be statistically not all the girls, but all the boys, every single one, right? So if naturally, humanly, everybody's doing that, then you want to teach it in a way of we are Yiddish and we do it like that. 100% teach it, but just normalize before, and so take away the shame. Take away the shame. I think that
I had a conversation with a colleague of ours. His name is Rabbi Barry Farka. She's also a therapist. He's also a Chabad Shliach in Washington. And we spoke about this. We actually recorded a podcast a little while ago that had a huge response. It was about healthy sexuality in the community and what it means. And now we recently did another one. I didn't publish it yet, about how to have this conversation a conversation with Bacher. How to think about this, in his literally very similar words. First, normalize, understand this is human development, this is how it goes, and what's called normalize. He also added another piece, and maybe I'm curious what you think about this.
Yeah, let me hear.
That as parents, one thing we can do, not prevention or anything, but we need to provide safety even before love. We need, like you said, the ice pop, the freeze pop. We need to provide an environment that our kids can come to us with anything that happens in their life. That means if somebody, I come to you with a bad grade, and they don't see you freaking out, or they come to you with something, the refrigerator broke, or my sister just fell off the bike, that you're a safe place. I can bring to you something that's distressing. Yes, you could be even upset, but I know that you're not losing your stuff. So that when I can come, chas v'shalom, something happens that is somebody's asking me to touch you. They know the place I'm going to go to with this. I don't have to hold this myself. Is my parents. Safety, 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 safety.
Exactly. This is all the prevention you can, if you really want to know what kind of prevention you can do, is that what Barry Farcoach's name is?
Yeah.
Said, if you are a safe person, and I also want to say that even if you're not preventing something from happening, you are preventing PTSD from happening. I think there was a study with rape victims, and only 20% of rape victims developed PTSD symptoms. And the difference was because they had one person they can go to.
And talk about it.
Yes,
and
because really
process.
all I do as a therapist is to be that person that they never had, to be the outcry witness, and in a group, it's the group is the outcry witness. That's all we do. And then they get processed in the brain. And then it is calm, and it is not developed. It's not doing PTSD anymore.
Sorry, before I ask you like my 3 questions that I like to ask at the end, or 2 questions that I like to ask, is there something else that you feel like we should talk about?
Yes, there is one more thing, one more subject. And that's one of the reasons also why I set up the group, where that was maybe the first reason, and then came this drama and solidified it. There is this idea in healing, and it's a cultural piece, and I think it's shifting, that you hold sexual abuse survivors like that with white gloves, and they're sexual abuse survivors, and so, right? That is not healing. Sexual abuse survivors always go off the derech. That's another thing that's not healing.
Not true, you see. It's not true.
It's just not true. If that would be true, then we would have a quarter of Klal Yisrael or more would be off the derech. It's 100% not true. I think people go off there for 100 different reasons, and many of it has to do with sexual abuse, but many more stay. Many more sexual abuse survivors stay from. That's not helpful. The other thing is that there is this thing of there needs to be an environment of hating on the abuser, hating. And if you're supporting a sexual abuse survivor, your support is going to be if you hate. Okay? The other thing is that and it's a myth, you don't know what the survivor needs, and all you got to do is listen and ask. You just being next to a sexual abuse survivor and hating on their abuser, I don't know if they need that or not. Maybe they do, if they say so, right? That's another myth. The other myth is it's not a total myth about the hating on the abuser. Like, all right, we need to be in hate of the act, but just putting it on the survivor that you need to hate is not helpful for the healing. The other thing is that there needs to be, and there is this environment, especially with women healing, that men are pigs and that's how you heal kind of idea, that we have to all be in that environment, which is extremely detrimental to the healing, right? And that you're not enough of a survivor if you don't think that way. And here's the next thing that is a hindrance to the healing, is that there is this myth, and it's also not a total myth, there is a reason for it, but it's taken out of context, that men who have been sexually abused will be addicts, and women who've been sexually abused will be asexual or sexually anorexic. Okay? That is very detrimental to the healing. Detrimental, am I using the right word? And I think I'm using it.
Yeah, detrimental is a
Okay.
good word.
Okay.
Is it correct to say that they're either hyper or hyposexual, or none of that is true?
Yes,
Meaning
it is.
that they become very strongly attached to sexual expression, or less attached, hyposexual.
Yes.
Or even that is not true.
Well, that could be true. It's not a given. It's very often. It's very likely. Yes, very likely. But most survivors, men and women, fluctuate between them. Sometimes they are like that, and sometimes they are like that. And what I've seen, why this is so detrimental, why it's so hurtful to the healing of women, is because I think men have an easier time speaking up that they have a sex addiction, and women don't. And then we have women who are struggling sexually with a sex addiction, and they have no space to speak up. I think I told this to you when we met at the Neshama conference.
You say that women have less comfort to speak about sex addiction than men.
100%. Women have less comfort and they struggle with it by themselves. A woman from outside of the USA reached out to me. I don't remember where she's from. And she said to me if I have a resource for her from women who are sex addicts. I don't think that it exists, and I'm
thinking right now as we speak. I can't think of any group that's specifically for women. There are groups that are open to both. Especially 12 groups.
Yes.
Yeah, but not. I can't think of any and I'm sure. I hope that somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, no, there's this group and that group," because
yes, I hope so too. Somebody needs to create that.
Yeah.
And I want to say a strong story about that. I once had a person who came to me just for one session. I want to say this in enough obscure way. She came to me for one session just to say that she was an addict. She didn't come again until a lot of years later. And just speaking up that one session gave her the ability to become sober. And when she had come back to me a lot of years later, not a lot, maybe it was a year later, I don't know, but she was still clean.
Wow. That's powerful. So just having, again, like you were saying before, have someone to witness, to hear you, to be with you was what was needed here, not to be by yourself and have to hold it all.
Yeah.
All under.
And so when we create these dynamics within a support group or within a healing group, that first of all, we need to hate on abusers. We need to hate men. And we need to all be asexual. That is a hindrance to the healing. A lot of sexual abuse survivors are happily married and they have good sons and good brothers, and some of them have good fathers, or many of them. And we are here, men and women are here to balance off each other. And I think the men take a little bit more of a protective role and the women take more of a nurturing role. Maybe that's very traditional, but the point is we are both here in our own roles and we both need to be healthy.
Love it. I have one last question before we go to the to kind of the closing.
Yeah.
Have you ever, or would you ever, treat an abuser?
Honestly, I think it would be very hard for me to do, even though I would have that part that feels, it's contributing to the community and to the healing. And how could we have healing if nobody's providing for the abusers, right? But I also want to stay within my jurisdiction of what I am really good at and what I could do and what gift I can give. When I'm doing a incest survivor group or incest survivor intensive, I can feel that this is where I'm meant to be. And it's like, how am I not doing this more often kind of idea? But I really want to put it out there. There needs to be space for perpetrators. There needs to be the healing, and that's the only way we will heal as a community. And so whoever could do this work, I know there is a guy, I think, from Israel who does this work. I don't remember his name.
There are a couple out there that I think that, again, it's in every therapy room because, like you said, if there is the victim in the room, there's the perpetrator in the room too.
Yes.
So...
And maybe the fact that not a lot of therapists know about that, I don't want to say it for sure, but maybe it is because they're holding it because they don't feel that they can say it.
Yeah. Okay, Suri, you're on this podcast. You have a message to the world. It does not have to be related to this field. You have an opportunity, something that's meaningful that you wish that people would know.
I think that we as a generation have been gifted with being a generation of maybe starting real deep healing. I think our kids will do more. And I think that I feel lucky, and I hope that everyone in this generation feels lucky for the amount of healing our world is being soaked in. And I think that this is our purpose. And I think we feel more, of healing, and I want to say Shekhinah in our work. And I think Hashem is bringing us closer to Mashiach like that.
Wow, I love it. I mean, this is an answer to the question. It's like, how come 30 years ago nobody needed to go to a therapist, and today everybody is a therapist in a drama group? And the answer is because we're doing a much deeper level of
Work.
awareness.
I don't think that 30 years ago people didn't need to go to therapy.
They didn't.
They just didn't.
Right.
I think that 6 years ago people needed therapy. They just didn't. And if we really choose to opt out of doing healing work, we could. We could live the same dysfunctional life. We could.
It's true.
I'm not saying all of it was dysfunctional, but I do think that everybody needed therapy. We're just lucky enough somehow that Hashem is giving it to us, and we can get to live this life.
I'd like to say that we're even living in a state and time where we are not just either post-war trying to recreate. We just have a little more menuchas hanefesh to actually tend to our nefesh, to tend to our soul, and to tend to our wounds in a deeper way.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yes.
A habit, something that you've picked up for yourself that you started doing that has really created a certain sense of stability, beauty in your life, something that's not like hey, go to school and become a therapist, but something small that if people would know about it, maybe it can be helpful to them.
I think that people know about this. It's going to sound cliche, but it's really true. It's really stopping and taking a breath. Hashem has gifted me. I'm going to turn the camera around. I have a beautiful view right here. And there's a story around how I got this room and how it waited for me. But so I just want to adjust the camera back. But what I do is I try to be in stillness. Really exhale, because there's this box kind of breathing, but the real better way to do it is to do 4, 4, and 6. So it would be something like.
So 4 in, 4 hold, 6 out.
Exhale. Yeah, could you hear how my voice is more grounded and more calm? So I think that's my habit that I've gotten into. Really.
So whenever I feel a little dysregulated, it's a big word, but I could feel a little bit ungezeugen in Yiddish. I feel a little activated. I can just hold it for 4 seconds and exhale, make my exhale longer than my inhale, and just come back to where I am here in the now. Beautiful.
And to not be embarrassed to do it wherever. I mean, you're asking a habit. I can just do it. I can just 1 minute, let me take a breath, Let me do it all the time.
Beautiful. Wow. Sorry, I really appreciate this conversation. You had mentioned that this was your first time. It didn't feel like it was your first time to be on a podcast, and more importantly, you have a inspiring, meaningful, urgent message that you're sharing, and population that you work with. And I want to wish you insane amount of hatzlacha to continue to be able to help the people that you're helping, specifically this population who deserves it most. Because so many times this is a population that from an early point on in life missed out on just being and participating in life fully.
Yeah.
And you're giving it back to them. Thank you.
Yes. I don't want to say that it's they didn't participate at all, because I think that we have.
It was harder.
It was harder. I think that survivors have the resilience and all that brings them back. But yes, and I want to say, Shlomi, thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for inviting me. It was an honor. All right. Thank you so much. I hope this is a gift to even one person. All right.